Hi, everybody. We're just getting started, so I'll give a few moments for people to just slowly pop in. Um, Not sure how many people have joined in yet, but if you do end up joining in, just let me know where you're from. And what we're going to do today is just essentially treat it like a question answer. Okay. So just a quick introduction, and I'll repeat myself after as well when people start joining in. That my name is Nadia Bakhtiari. I'm one of the supervising lawyers, a Canadian lawyer licensed in Ontario at Visa Place. And Visa Place is a immigration law firm in Toronto and elsewhere in the States. We handle both American files and Canadian files. But today we're going to talk a little bit about Canadian. So that's going to be the topic of conversation. I'm just checking in the comments, how many people are joining in and where they're joining in from. So that's wonderful. Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you guys and to be able to chat with you a little bit today. So as people start trickling in, we're probably going to just treat this like a question answer period. And I did one of these about 2 weeks ago, and there were so many questions that popped in. We didn't really have a lot of time to go through everything. So hopefully today I'll be able to handle as many questions. So feel free to put your questions in the chat. I'm going to try to get to all of them as much as I can. Best thing to do, I found last time when we were doing this, sometimes questions were too general, like questions like, how can I come to Canada? It's tough for me to answer that because there's just so many different ways, but maybe I can use it as an opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit about what the various options are. So feel free to put something specific if you're comfortable with it, and I'll do my best to answer it. So for all the new people who are just joining in, again, thank you so much. I see we have people from the States, from the Middle East, from South Asia. Thank you guys again for joining. So for anyone new, we're going to do a question answer for now, and then I can chat about some specific new programs if you guys want to. That's completely fine with me. So I just want to be able to help you guys a little bit, chat a little bit, explain some new developments in Canadian immigration, and see what we can do to help. So before I go into some of the questions, I'm just going to do another quick intro for the 20 or so new people that joined in the last 2 minutes. I'm a licensed lawyer in the province of Ontario in Canada, and Visa Place and myself, we handle Canadian immigration matters. We also handle American matters if you guys are interested. I won't be able to answer your American questions today, but you can always reach out at visaplace.com and book a consultation and speak with one of our US lawyers. So always keep that in the back of your mind. All right. So I'll just jump right in. So again, if you guys are joining in, feel free to just ask a few questions in the chat, and I'll be going through them and answering as much as I can. Just try to be as specific as possible if you can, and if you feel comfortable with it, just so I can try to answer and help you guys out as much as possible. Okay. All right. So let's start with the first question that I see. The question is, I'm a registered midwife. My IELTS score is 5.5. I have 3 years experience, and I want to go for PR. So immediately I would advise doing 2 things. One is taking a look at the healthcare provider home care support work program. It's closed for 2022, but I believe it's going to be opening up in 2023. So again, it's called home care support worker, home child support worker. And this is a pathway for PR. If you're in programs like, it can be even healthcare, personal support, personal assistance, nannies, things like that is a really good option for obtaining PR. The second thing I would suggest is looking at a skilled worker position, because you are in a healthcare position. Just double check to see if your position as a registered midwife will qualify for an applicable NOC code. And your NOC code is a number and almost title that Immigration Canada gives you so that you can qualify for something called Express Entry. So Express Entry would be a great program if you are a skilled worker and you qualify. Whether you are in any healthcare occupation, such as being a nurse, being a doctor, a chiropractor, and midwife, it should fall under a skilled worker position. So just double check. It's called an NOC code. Okay. Now, my only suggestion to you, your IELTS score is 5.5. It's a little bit low. So as a focus for you for now, I would work on improving your IELTS score. You should probably aim for something in the 6.5 to 7.5. That's a more realistic goal, because the higher your IELTS score, the higher your overall score. So make sure that's your focus. And then take a look at both skilled worker and take a look at home child care support worker. Okay. Now moving on to the next question. And I appreciate the detail there as well. The question is, I'm an American. My husband is German, but we got married in America. What are the first steps we should take to immigrate to Canada? So when you're American and you're trying to come to Canada, the easiest way is usually through a job offer. So a job offer can be done through the NAFTA agreement. And the NAFTA agreement is something that we have in place for Canada, Mexico, and USA. And it's just one of the easiest pathways to get to Canada if you want to work or if you want to have permanent residency in the country. So for that question, I think the best thing to look at is whether you're able to obtain a job offer and come in through, whether it's a TN visa, whether it's a transfer visa, through an intra-company transfer, or any other skilled worker that has a job offer in Canada. It's very easy to obtain so long as you have good travel history, a good history of compliance. And what compliance means is that you've gone to other countries and that you've been a respectful visitor in those countries. You know, you don't have a history of breaking immigration laws. So I would probably look at that as a first option. It's probably the easiest and fastest way. I know it's always really difficult to obtain job offers when you're not from inside of the country, but if they know that you're American, I've heard more companies are a little bit more willing because they know how simple the process can be. Okay, so I would take a look there. If you guys are a young couple and you have skilled worker experience, then perhaps also take a look at Express Entry as well. Express Entry through Federal Skilled Worker or Express Entry through what's called PNP. Those are both really good programs, but it depends on your qualifications. So take a look at it, do a score on your calculation. But if you need someone to help assess you, feel free to contact us as well. Okay. I have another question here, and sorry for the people who have joined in. We're going to be doing a question answer hour. So if you have any questions that you have, please put them in just one comment and put as many details as you possibly can so that I can make sure I answer your question as quickly as possible. So feel free to answer, to ask, and I'll do my best to answer Canadian immigration-based questions, and that would be good. Just really quickly, I see someone says, can you speak, I think, French? I can't speak French, but I'm going to be doing this in English. But if you want to write your question in French, I can read it and answer it in English. Okay. The next question is, I've applied for Canada, but I was refused. I've got an invitation for my brother. I've got an invitation from my brother. What are my options? I've completed a lot of industrial hazmat technician courses. It means working with hazardous materials and dangerous goods. I just want to ask a follow-up question to you, that you applied for Canada, but what did you apply for that got refused? Just so I can properly take a look. I also see someone commented quickly, calendar invitation for the web meeting is canceled. I'm not sure if that's referring to this live, but if so, I'll let our team know about that. So just coming back to that question, I've applied for Canada, but I was refused. If you wouldn't mind just sending a follow-up, just let me know what application you had applied to, so that I can better answer that question as to maybe why you refused and whatever else you can do. Okay. But just in general, if you have a lot of experience in hazmat technician courses and working in that area, there are a couple programs you can take a look at. I would say probably one of them, I hesitate to say skilled worker because most likely it's not going to fall under a skilled worker occupation. So a skilled worker occupation can range from anything from being an accountant, a financial analyst, a manager, but there are some construction related occupations that are skilled worker. Something like a carpenter would be qualified as a skilled worker. I'm not sure about your specific circumstance. So you might have to take a look at your specific job title, see if it falls under what's called the NOC code. If you remember, we chatted about that. See if it falls under that, and then maybe you can take a look at Federal Skilled Worker Express Entry. If it find that you don't fall under one of the skilled worker positions through Express Entry, then you can look at a job offer in this specific position, and it would be a low skilled job offer that you can apply to with an LMIA. So ensure you have a job offer for it, and then you can take a look at the low skilled job offer opportunity. Okay. I see the follow-up that says you were refused for your financial status. I mean, what type of application did you apply for? Was it a visitor visa? Okay. I see a next question that says, I'm from Kenya. I have CTD. Can you tell me how I can visit Canada? Can you tell me what CTD is, just so I can better? I hope it's not something that's obvious that I don't know, but if you can just let me know a little bit more detail about that. Next I have is my sister is in the USA. She is holding a B2 visa. She has some disability. Can she go to Vancouver to see her sister? We weren't able to contact our sister. My sister is in the US. Are you in Canada? I assume you are. So for some of these questions, guys, if you don't mind just giving me a bit more detail, just so I make sure I don't have to bother you guys and ask you to come back on some of the details. So for example, if your sister's in the US, she's holding a B2 visa, what's her country of citizenship? I'm assuming it's from a country that requires a visa to come to Canada if she needs a visa to be in the States. And can she go to Vancouver to see her sister? So does she have a visitor visa to Canada? Does she need a visitor visa to come to Canada? If you don't know, then just let me know what her citizenship is, and then I can probably guide you from there. Okay. Now, I'm so sorry. I'm coming back to this hazmat question. I really want to make sure I answer it. So I got the follow-up. It's that you had applied for a tourist visa, and based on your financial status, if that's the only reason that you were refused, then it's very likely that your financial status was probably not properly put in your application. So as lawyers, we take a bit more extra steps than what Immigration Canada asks you for. So Immigration Canada will say, do you have a financial support person who can provide you with a letter or proof of finances? And you probably provided that. But you do need to also provide your own financial situation in most of occasions, unless you're, a minor or dependent. So if you were refused on financial status, it's likely you did not put the proper information before the officer. Or if you really believe that you did, then in that case, it might be that you didn't have enough funds. Now, what sufficient funds look like for something like a visitor visa would be approximately 5,000 Canadian. There's no set amount, but I think that's a good range to aspire for. So if you have more follow-up questions, you can contact us at Visa Place for the financial status, because what we can do on a consultation is essentially look at your past refusals. In some cases, I do recommend you do what's called ATIP notes, which is access to information and privacy, and you can get the detailed reasons for the refusal. But before you do that, I recommend just contacting a lawyer to see if we can assess to see what the actual fault happened. I mean, why did this get refused? Because sometimes it's something that can be very obvious to us and not necessarily obvious to you. So feel free to get in touch with us, and then I can take a look at the past refusal and see, what's the reason beyond just what you applied for and what perhaps you can do next to have it be successful. Okay. The next question I have is, does knowing how to speak French improve your chances of immigrating to Canada successfully? That is an excellent, excellent question. The answer is yes, absolutely. So Canada's currently going through a phase where they really, really want to attract as many French-speaking people as possible. And in that case, if you do an English language test, you get a specific amount of points. Let's say hypothetically, maximum you can get 10 points. But if you do a French language test, you can get significantly more than 10 points because Canada really wants to emphasize the French speakers that are here. So if you are fluent in French, even if you have working proficiency or intermediate levels in French, I highly recommend doing both an English and French exam because it'll increase your chances for express entry by increasing your score. There are also a lot of French-speaking programs that are dedicated to people who speak French. So absolutely, it's an asset. There's a plethora of options that you have. But I really recommend it if you're looking to apply to Canada and you know even a little bit, just do an English and French language test. Okay. Next question I have is, I'm a technical recruiter with 12 plus years of experience. My IELTS score is 6.5. Most of my experience as an independent consultant, and I have my own company registered and working with clients through the company. I've been told this experience cannot be considered since I don't have an experience letter. So what option do I have to proceed for PR? So first and foremost, I mean, people saying that you can't have that experience be considered because you don't have an experience letter, that's not necessarily true. So what you need when you have your own business, there's a couple requirements, and it's not only an experience letter. It needs to also have some things like, I'm just going off the top of my head, but things like a letter from an accountant that proves that your business is legitimate and that you've been operating it for a specific amount of years. You can show a business plan. You can show taxes that you filed for your business. You essentially just need to prove that it's real work you've been doing. So there's actually quite a bit of discretion when it comes to owning your own business and applying for federal skilled worker. And I wouldn't say that express entry is not on the table for you just because you can't produce one document. Now, with that being said, what option do I have to proceed for PR? I still recommend looking into express entry. Having 12 plus years of experience is really good. So probably take another look at that. I think you need a little bit more advice in terms of what can be experience, what can be considered experience for your independent consultancy and your having your own company. So I wouldn't close the door on express entry in that case. Okay. Let's see. Next one is, and hello to everybody who's just joining in, by the way. I know we're about 20 minutes in. So if you're newly here, thanks for joining in. We're just doing some question answers and see how that goes. Okay. Feel free to ask your questions in the comments, and I'll try to get to them as quickly as possible. Okay. Hello, ma'am. How are you? I'm good, thank you. How are you? Which health status will you look into for one to be eligible for a work visa? Can you clarify what you mean by health status? I'm not sure what that means. If you're talking about inadmissibility for medical purposes, I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. So just clarify. Some of these comments are so funny. Just clarify what you mean by health status. Okay. Next we have, so my boyfriend is in the US and I want to migrate over there. I don't know how to do it. It's my first time. I need your company to help me. That's a great question. I am a Canadian lawyer, so I likely won't be able to answer that question for you. But if you guys have any US related immigration questions, please feel free to go on visaplace.com. And you'll be able to book a consultation through there with one of our US lawyers or US consultants. And we have a whole US team, legal team, lawyers, legal assistants that can help you on your applications the same way we do on Canada. So I likely won't be able to help you in this live. I hope you still stick around, but they are really, really valid questions. So if you need proper legal advice on them and you're curious about it, please just book a consultation. You can do that from going on visaplace.com. Okay. What is the best route to get to Canada as a dental surgeon? It's a really good question. With healthcare, when it comes to doctors and surgeons, you have kind of I don't want to say easy path, because it's not necessarily easy. As you know, if you're in the industry, there's a lot of licensing requirements you need to go through, but you will almost automatically qualify as a skilled worker and will likely be pulled out very quickly, especially when healthcare is so in demand in Canada right now. So I would say the best route for Canada is two things. One is a job offer, which will require you to be licensed in the province that you're going to be operating out of. So for example, if you were a doctor and you were coming to Ontario, you need to take a look at, what's it called? The Ontario Registered Physicians, something like that. And they'll essentially convert your license. So you would either do it through a job offer, because it does absolutely qualify as skilled work. And secondly is you can also take a look at Express Entry. It's also a really, really good, it's also a really, really good option for someone who's in healthcare. So take a look at that. It would be a pretty easy route for you to go. The only thing to remember is when it comes to Express Entry, you absolutely want to ensure that it's not just about your work. It's also about your education, your language abilities, your age. So evidently you're going to have good education. You're a dental surgeon, but take a look at your age and your language scores to ensure that you would be a really good candidate for Express Entry. Okay. How much CRS score of Express Entry will the CRS scores decrease in the future for Express Entry? Great question. My personal belief, this is not legal advice. My personal belief is that it has to. Canada has permanent residency targets that they have to hit every year. And at the rate it's going now, the reason why I believe it's so high is because there is a large backlog that's happening with Immigration Canada for a ton of applications. I mean, if you have a visitor visa in process, then I know you're struggling with processing time. If you have a sponsorship application in process, I know you're struggling with processing time. And similarly with Express Entry, whether it's Canadian Experience Class or whether it's federal skilled worker, but particularly federal skilled worker, there is significant backlog. So the reason why I think they're so high right now is that they're trying to avoid people getting angry that there's no draws, but they're just essentially drawing so few people at a time. So I think in the new year, they will start decreasing the scores below 500 as a norm. And we can see for federal skilled worker, I mean, my assumption is that it's going to be anywhere from 475 to 500 for the first half of 2023. And that would be for federal skilled worker, because again, like I said, they have to hit their PR quota numbers. And that's a new plan that Immigration Canada has come out with. Okay. All right, I see a couple questions that aren't in the sheet. So let me ask one more. Okay, how does spouse entry work? If one has a job offer, will there be a problem with the other getting a visa from the USA to Canada? Very good question. So let me just rephrase that a little bit. So in terms of a dependent getting a job offer, so let's say your spouse, let's say, you know, your husband is the one who has a job offer inside of Canada and he enters in on an open work permit, then in most scenarios, you are also eligible for an accompanying work permit. So it really does depend sometimes on the specific program you go on. But for the most part, if you have a job offer and your spouse is getting a work permit, then you as their spouse will likely be able to get a work permit as an accompanying dependent. So it's quite straightforward. And similarly, if you have children, then your children will be able to get either study permits or TRVs, depending on what they need, depending on their age. They'll be able to do that to be accompanying as well. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to go through the chat, see if there's anything I missed. So another question I see here is immigration consultant under skilled worker. It should be. Yeah, I don't know if the not code's off the top of my head, but I would presume that it does fall under a skilled worker. So for the person who asked this question, what I recommend doing is going on the NOC search. We also have one on our website, visaplace.com. So if you try type VisaPlace NOC code, we have a really excellent tool in which you can just type your job title, and what you're going to do is see if immigration consultant falls under NOC A, B, or 0. Okay. All right. Let's see. So another question I'm seeing is, can someone come to Canada on a visitor visa and work? Also, how can you change visiting visa to work permit? So it's a really, really good question. So when you enter Canada as a visitor, your intentions have to be being a temporary resident. So when you're a temporary resident, you have to enter the country as if you're a tourist. You can't show up at the border and say, hey, I'm here to work, even though I'm here as a tourist. So you have to make sure that you understand that. But once you are here, there is a program in place, I believe it's until February 2023, in which if you get a job offer inside of Canada, you are able to switch your status from tourist to work permit. So it really does depend if you have a job offer, and if you do, you have essentially until February 2023. Okay. All right. All right, give me 1 second. I'm just going to go through the questions in the comments a little bit more. I think there's a couple I missed. So I see another question that's asking about H-2B. Just a reminder, so if you're here and you want to ask a few questions about U.S. immigration, I'm not going to be able to answer that just because I'm a Canadian lawyer, but please go to visaplace.com because we can book a consultation for you. We have a whole U.S. team, so feel free to do that as well. Okay. So next question I see is, help me reach Canada. I graduated in electrical engineering and have experience in maintenance, oil and gas and construction project. That's great. It seems like you're probably a young candidate and you're probably going to be quite good at or do quite well in terms of having a high CRS score. So make sure that you take a look at Express Entry, see what your CRS score can be, because Express Entry could likely be a very good option for you. So if you are practicing currently in electrical engineering, then that is certainly a skilled worker position, and that can be an option for you. So take a look at federal skilled worker. And if you do obtain a job offer, then PNP can also be on the table. Okay. I'm looking at the next one. I'm from Lebanon and I live in Liberia. I'm 21 years old. I'm a manager in a supermarket corporation. Can you help me come to Canada? So being a manager is also a skilled worker position. So you're going to take a look at a supervisory knock code, which is usually one that starts in 0. And you can also take a look at, same as above, Express Entry skilled worker, see if you qualify. And that can be a really good route for you as well, especially with your age. That's the younger you are, or I think the sweet spot for CRS scores is something like 25 to 30. But even if you're 21 or so, it's still a really good age to be in terms of collecting points. Okay. Let's see. Hi, can you help me get a job offer in Canada? I've applied for immigration and applying for PNP program. So unfortunately, we're not able to apply for PNP programs. We're not able to apply for job offers for you. We absolutely can apply for PNP programs for you. So that's not a problem. But we are not able to help with job offers. Okay. You see, what about independent contractors from US to Canada? Sabrina, can you revert back to what question you're referring to in terms of independent contractors? Do you mean, were you the one who asked the question about if you're looking to get a job and you're from the States and go to Canada? And I talked about a TN visa or a work permit. Just let me know if that's what you're referring to. Okay. All right, let's see. I'm catching up. I think I'm 10 minutes behind. So, all right. Okay, so I see another person who's a truck driver in Canada. So I think I talked about this one. Which health status will you look into? I'm not sure if you followed up with that. But just so you know, if you are a truck driver and you're looking to come to Canada, we have, especially Saskatchewan, has a new program for truck drivers. I think it's just Saskatchewan for now, but you're able to obtain permanent residency through truck driving as an occupation. So it's an excellent route. Francis, you asked, is the consultation free of charge? No, they're not. But you do get linked up with a licensed consultant or lawyer for the consultations. So we do try to provide as much valuable legal advice as we possibly can for consultations. This person asked a good question, which I think is worth addressing. It's from Chrysander. Can you please explain in detail the CRS scores process? I have experience as a receptionist at a hospital for 2 years. So let's talk a little bit about the CRS score process. CRS score is essentially, I'm trying to think the best way to explain it, but the CRS score is kind of like you want to apply for something and they're looking at your resume and they're thinking, okay, what's the highest score I can give this person based off the resume? And they're looking at your education, your work experience. They're looking at your age. They're looking at your language scores. So those kinds of things are essentially what the CRS score's purpose is. But CRS score is not necessarily sufficient in itself. So most programs, most PNP and federal skilled worker have CRS score, but they also have a requirement score, which is, for example, for federal skilled worker, theirs is 67 out of 100. And they're looking at the same thing. They're looking at age, education, language, work experience, but each program has a sub-heading or sub-specific amount of points that they're looking at. But the CRS score, the reason why it's really important to have as high of a possible CRS score as possible is that when a draw comes every so often, they're going to pick out a number. And if that number is, let's say, 475 and your score is 478, then you're going to be invited to apply for PR. So that's why the higher your CRS score, the better, because if the cutoff is a specific amount and you're over it, that's how you get your foot through the door. Now, when it comes to things like federal skilled worker that have 67 out of 100, let's say you have 67 and another person has 69. It's not really going to make a difference. What makes a difference is your CRS score. Okay. So another question is, what are the chances of getting a student visa once you have an acceptance letter? So it's hard to say in terms of chances. It always depends on everyone's situation. So for example, let's say you are applying for a study permit to come to Canada and you have a really great application. And what I mean by a great application is you have travel history, you have ties back home, you have a purpose of study that makes sense. So let's say, you're a biology student and then you're trying to get into a nursing program. It makes sense. It's healthcare, right? So those kinds of things, as well as financial stability, you'll likely have a strong chance of getting admitted with an approval. But I can't say chances, and I can't say if it's going to be good or bad, because everyone's situation is very case specific. If you're wondering about a study permit, feel free to contact us, and we'll be able to kind of assess how strong your application is and see if it's something we can help you with as well. Because I can tell you, I mean, I do study permits all the time, and not everybody has a strong application right off the bat. Some people do. Some people come to us and like I look at their application and I think, oh yeah, it's a shoe in. But other people struggle. Most people struggle with at least one aspect. Maybe they've never traveled before. Maybe they want to completely switch gears. Like they want to go from being an engineer to being, I don't know, an accountant. So in those cases, that's what we do as lawyers. We're there to help you put together a strong application and make sure it gets approved in light of your weaknesses. And we do our very best in that regard. But just because you might have one, you know, you've never traveled before, or maybe you don't have that many ties to your home country, it shouldn't dissuade you from at least trying to apply for a study permit. Just make sure you have proper legal counsel that's guiding you through and putting together the strongest application they possibly can. Okay. Shazita, you had asked, your son's visitor visa got denied a few years ago. Can he apply again? Yes, there is no limit to how many times you can apply for a visitor visa. I just don't recommend just applying back to back. Once you get your first refusal, you need to examine why you got your first refusal. Don't just jump into reapplying. Don't just jump into the next step. Try to understand why the refusal came to begin with. So what I recommend is take a look at your refusal letter. You can, run it through a lawyer. We take a look at refusal letters all the time. Or you can just, take a look. Did I make a mistake? Did I fall short on something? And then I would suggest applying again. Okay. Just so you know, you don't have to be married to apply for a visitor visa. So that's okay. How can someone get a Canadian visa from Nigeria? So, Okpan, you're just going to apply for what's called a temporary resident visa. And it's a multi-entry visa that essentially allows you to apply and enter as a visitor into Canada. You need to have a proper purpose of visit before you apply for a visa. It can't just be, oh, I want to come to Canada. You need to, have some sort of argument or purpose as to why you would want the Canadian visa. But that's the way to do it from Nigeria. Okay. All right, let's keep going. This person asked what I think is a good question, but if I can just get you to rephrase it because I don't think I understand. Sorry, actually, Okpan, I saw you sent a follow-up. As a teacher in Nigeria, can I get a job offer in Canada? Yes, you can. So I can't help you with the job offer aspect, but it is possible to get a job offer in teaching from Nigeria. Once you do, you're going to have to apply for an LMIA. Okay. So the other question that I was saying is, I just want them to rephrase is, hi, can I come to Canada with a visa holiday and after apply for holiday work visa temporarily? Sybil, I'm so sorry. If you can just, I want to answer the question because I think it's probably a very, very good and specific question I can help you with. Have to apply for a work visa temporarily. I wonder if you mean, can you extend your holiday work visa? If so, the answer is it depends. Depends on the country because every country has specific IEC holiday work visa requirements. So it's unclear if that's going to be an option for you because I'm not sure what country you're from and why it might have expired. Okay. Next question is, what's the best program to apply for as a geriatric nurse and caregiver? Patricia, I would say there's two. One is probably home care support worker. That could be very good for your caregiver side. Home care support program will be open in 2023. So take a look at it because it's a really good option for PR and for people in this field. But otherwise, if you're going off your nursing, then it would probably be better to look at federal skilled worker or skilled worker in general, express entry, because it would qualify as a skilled work position. Okay. Next question. It seems like an ethical question. I applied for a job in Canada, and now the company is asking me to send $150 to them to pay for my biometrics. Is it legal for me to send them money? Because I know a company is responsible for all of visa and work permit processing. I'm not going to speak about the company because I don't know about that, but I don't see why it would be illegal. Just so you know, biometrics is $85. It's not $150. So that's just the thing I'm going to answer about that question. Biometrics is $85, not $150. But a work permit can be $155 and $150. So maybe that's what you're being asked to pay. Sabrina asked, what is the best way for immigrants to get housing if you don't have credit in Canada? Does American Credit Information do anything to help? I wish I could answer this question for you. I'm not qualified to talk about housing. So I would probably reach out to maybe a realtor would probably be the best person to contact for that. I wonder who else would probably be a good contact for you, but not me, unfortunately. I wish I had more knowledge on real estate over immigration. Are there any reputable Canadian job agencies I can go to? None that I know of, and I can't refer them if I even knew. So I'm not sure. Okay. So Sabrina, in terms of sticking with you, in terms of independent contractors for work permits, I think there are a couple job offers that can help you with contracting. In general, contracting is kind of ill-advised because it doesn't technically count as a permanent job offer, which is necessary for most employer-specific work permits. But we'll need to double check to see if there's any exceptions to it for contractors. But most likely, I want to say no, because job offers do require permanent and full-time. Okay. Visa Immigration has a work visa without IELTS. You don't need to give IELTS to get a job offer if that's what you're inquiring about. Okay. The other question is, can I get a job as farm work in Canada? Yes, Canada does have farm work pilot programs. I'm not sure if they're going on right now, but in general, it's a really good option. Okay, that's a great question. What's the next step if you have found an employer who's willing to sponsor you through the LMIA? So first point is get a lawyer if you want to, because we'll be able to guide you through, and the employer, how to actually go through with doing a proper LMIA. So for example, if you have a job offer and they said, no worries, we're going to do all the steps to help you through it, the first thing you want to do is talk about your qualifications in light of the LMIA. So for example, let's say you're applying for an accountant position. You want to make sure you have all the proper qualifications that Canada looks for job offers for an accountant. So for example, for the job offer, are you making, a minimum wage? If so, that doesn't really make sense in light of what an accountant makes in Canada. So you've got to go through all those requirements, make sure that your employer is going to have the proper procedure and proper requirements in place before they sponsor you, so that you don't have to worry about a potential refusal based on not putting together a sufficient LMIA. Okay. Thank you to the person who says, I love you. That's very nice. Thank you. I want to help you, so please put your question in there so I can help you out. Okay. Okay. What program can we apply for without IELTS? Let me see. Program without IELTS. I mean, it depends on what. For example, if you want to do a study permit, sometimes you do need IELTS. It really depends. So for example, if you're from a country where English is not spoken, I do recommend doing your IELTS just to prove that you have the language qualifications. There are also times where the university might ask you for IELTS. It all depends on your program, university, and country. But for the most part, generically, IELTS is not required for study permits. The other thing is most work permits do not require IELTS as well. So you can take a look at that as well. But most permanent residency does require IELTS. If you're already inside of Canada, there is a humanitarian and compassionate grounds application that does not require IELTS, but I'm going to presume you're not inside of Canada. And secondly, if you're doing something like a sponsorship, you also don't require IELTS. Okay. I saw something about Dubai. Let me see if I can scroll up. I don't want to miss it. I might have missed that question. Squinting. Okay. Oh, here we are. I live in Dubai. How can I apply for a Canadian visa? Please tell me. You're gonna apply through, if you're just looking for a tourist visa, it's called a TRV, and it's a multi-entry visa that you're able to apply for from Dubai. Okay. It's a good question. If I'm a student in Canada, how do I apply for a work permit? Excellent, excellent question. So if you are a student in Canada, then most likely you're eligible for a postgraduate work permit. It does depend, so you just want to double check. But for the most part, you are eligible for a postgraduate work permit. If that's the case, you're going to apply for a postgraduate work permit within 180 days, within 90 days, one of the two, before your studies end or after your studies end. After your studies end, you're going to need your final transcript or proof that you've completed your course, and then you're eligible for a postgraduate work permit, which is an open work permit, and that's going to be an excellent option. Now, if you're talking about how can I get a work permit while I'm a student, you can't unless you're in a co-op program. But I'm sure you know this, but students who are inside of Canada are eligible to work. They don't need a separate work permit. You just need to check that green slip that you have that shows you're a study permit holder. Check the bottom. It should be on the bottom left in small font that says this permit authorizes you to work in Canada. And maybe it'll say 20 hours, maybe it'll say 40 hours based on that new rule that's come out. So you'll be able to check. But in some, you can get a postgraduate work permit while you finish. You can get a work permit through a co-op if you're eligible. Or number 3, you are eligible to work if you're a student in Canada. Okay. Next question is, I'm from Afghanistan. I'm looking for community sponsorship organization for refugee sponsorship. So I can't help you find a community sponsorship. We do, I personally am doing quite a few sponsorships for private refugee sponsorship. We can't help you find a community organization, but instead what I do recommend is if you're struggling with it and you do need some help, there is government assisted refugee sponsorship, which essentially requires you to go to the UNHCR and apply for refugee protection. And that's an alternative if you can't find any private sponsorship to assist you. Okay. Now, this question was, is immigration consultant under skilled worker? I did answer this, but in case you missed it, the answer is most likely. The best tool to use is go on visaplace.com or type visaplace NOC code. NOC is spelled NOC, and see if immigration consultant falls under there based on your job duties. It's not always have to do with your title. It can also just be your job duties. Okay. What's the maximum age for someone to be accepted for immigration to Canada? There is no maximum age. I just recommend that. I mean, once you hit 40, I think you get 0 points for express entry. So if there's no maximum, you can be 105 if you wanted to, but you won't get points for being over 40, unfortunately. Is a previous IEC stay with a working holiday visa beneficial for immigration? It can be. It can. Most commonly, what I see is people who have working holiday visas would be eligible for Canadian Experience Class, which is one of the express entry programs. But you do need minimum 1 year of work experience inside of Canada to qualify. And sometimes working holiday visas don't give you that full 1 year. So if you do, then you would probably be eligible for Canadian Experience Class, so long as you were in Canada on a skilled work position. Okay. Are international students authorized to work in Canada? Yes, they are. It just depends on your permit. So make sure you, again, check your slip, check the bottom of the slip. If it says that you are authorized, then you're good to go. If it says you're not authorized, then you're not good to go. So check your green study permit slip. But for the most part, I want to say like maybe 95% of students in Canada are eligible to work on their study permit. Okay, I'm just laughing at the lyrics that are posted. Okay. All right. We have a late question that's just popped in. Hi, Nadia. I'm a bit late. That's okay. Welcome. Thank you for joining. You might have discussed it before. How to know that the application link which I'm using is not a scam, and which steps to be followed by drivers to apply for a work visa. So it's tough for me to answer that because when it comes to spam, I think the best way to be sure is to check with Immigration Canada. I think what I recommend is probably finding the phone number for Immigration Canada. Just type Immigration IRCC hotline. Call them and let them know what you've received. Ask them if it's spam, not spam, a scam, and then go from there. Because I'm not able to see what the application link is before me. So I would recommend calling Immigration Canada to make sure. I heard there's a lot of scams going on, so please be sure to take the proper steps not to fall into anything. Okay. We have about maybe 5 to 7 minutes left, so I'm going to try to get through as many as I possibly can. So the next question is, after studying, when you apply for a professional job, what is your status? And how long does it take to get to PR? Another really good question. So when you're done studying, the moment you apply for your postgraduate work permit, then you're still a student, but you're able to work full time. So when you apply for a postgraduate work permit, you're in that weird gray zone where you're a student / worker. But once you get the work permit, then that's when you officially become a worker. The fastest way to get a PR once you've been a student inside of Canada is to have been working for 1 year in a high-skilled position inside of Canada, because that'll make you eligible for Canadian Experience Class. So, I mean, the fastest way once you get your work permit or postgraduate work permit is 1 year. Sabrina asked, if you have a job offer, how long does it typically take to start working? It depends on your job offer, because the moment you get your work permit, you're good to go. And especially if you're coming in from the States, some of the time, most of the time, you can just get it at the port of entry. And processing time, again, depends on the job and depends on the program, depends on the country of citizenship. But hypothetically, you're an American coming in on a TN visa. It's pretty quick. You just need to make sure you get all the documents required, and you can even apply for it at the border and just, get it within 2 hours and then enter Canada. Okay. Would you be able to give an approximate estimate for the whole process work in getting the visa? Are you looking for an estimate in time, cost? I'm not sure. Okay. Oh, you commented again. Hold on, let me check. What are the monetary rules? Okay. So, Chrysander, if you can just follow up with your question in terms of estimate, what you mean. Someone commented, sure, if someone has got the skills and they can get Canadian work permit visa without sponsorship. What? I heard if someone has skills and they can get a Canadian work permit visa without sponsorship if you're between 18 and 35. Oh, I understand. Okay, so they're asking, can you get a work permit visa without sponsorship if you're between 18 and 35? No, not necessarily. You can get a work permit, but it depends without sponsorship, but it depends on the program. So kind of open-ended, but for the most part, no. I don't have WhatsApp for work purposes, but instead what I do recommend, if you want to chat a bit more, you can send me an email directly. My email is NADIA, Nadia B, @visaplace.com. Or alternatively, you can contact visaplace.com and you can book a consultation with one of our consultants. Some of you guys have really, really great questions that I would be happy to discuss further. And some of our consultants and lawyers would love to discuss with you as well. And of course, we'd be happy to help you. I mean, that's why we have these lives because I know, especially right now, post-COVID, immigration can be super, super confusing. So feel free to reach out if you need anything. Okay. I'm not jumping off yet. Chrysander, I owe you an answer. You're asking about time and costs. So let me scroll up to find your question again. You're asking what's the approximate. Okay. And follow up, you said, what are the monetary proofs we need to apply for an application for PR visa? How much would that be if there is? So I wonder if you're talking about temporary visa in the first part. So let's say hypothetically you're asking, what's the approximate process for a TRV? So I'm going to speak about our firm and practice specifically because that's really probably the best thing I can speak about. So when a TRV starts with my team, we start with document collection, and then we go into drafting forms and a submission letter for clients. Once it gets submitted to Immigration Canada, it goes to the visa office and consulate that's closest to your country of residence. So for example, if you live in Dubai and you're applying for a temporary resident visa, it gets processed out of the visa office and consulate in Abu Dhabi because that's the closest one to you. So every consulate has different processing time, but I would say it's about maybe, it can be anywhere from 2 to 5 months right now. Some places are 6 months, some places are 3 weeks. It really depends on the consulate. Now, in terms of the PR visa, one moment. I got you, Chrysander. Okay. What are the monetary proofs we need to provide for an application for a PR visa, and how much would that be if there is? So it really depends. PR have their specific requirements. So for example, for federal skilled worker, there are financial requirements based on your family size. But something like sponsorship of a spouse, like let's say you want to sponsor your wife to come from Brazil to come to Canada, then there's no specific amount of finances you need. It just needs to show that you're comfortably able to financially support yourself. Now, in terms of a temporary visa, what are the financial requirements? In that case, again, I would say like a good approximation is anything above 5,000 Canadian. That would be pretty good. But there are other considerations, like do you have employment? Do you have bank savings? Do you have property? That all can be taken into consideration as well. Okay. You're welcome, guys. Thank you for joining. I'm just going to end off on this one really good question. What should I do if I could not meet the residency obligation for PR Card Canada? I don't want to leave you on a cliffhanger, but it's a really long question or long answer. Essentially, you can do a couple things. You can either try to drive in, if you still have a PR card, drive in from the United States if you have a valid visa to the US and drive into Canada. Or number two, you can apply for a PR travel document to come back to Canada. Or number three is you can apply for PR renewals, whether it's a travel document or just a card renewal on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. It is a very legal heavy type of application. So I know I'm a little biased, but I recommend you get a lawyer for it because humanitarian compassionate grounds is quite difficult. So guys, as we're just wrapping up, thank you so much for joining. I really hope I got to as many questions and I was able to help you guys in any way. Please feel free to go on visaplace.com to book a consultation. If you still have any outstanding questions or you need some legal representation, because we would always be really happy to help you. That goes for Canadian and US law. So any questions on either end, we'll be able to help you out. Our team is lawyers, consultants, legal assistants, just a qualified bunch. So feel free to reach out and we'll be able to continue. So again, visaplace.com, or if you need Nadia B at visaplace.com, we'll be able to help you out from there. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. Hopefully I'll chat with you guys soon, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.